All right, Erev Tov, everybody. Chodesh Tov. We are here tonight, Monday night, Baruch Hashem. Our biggest crowd yet here in person, and for good reason, I think, because the calorie intake has pushed a new level here. The Ainara, with some delicious Moroccan treats around me. I'm going to do my best not to partake in this food while I'm giving the drasha, because that wouldn't be professional. But it's great to have everybody back as we study our Parashat Shavua, Parashat Toledot. So, two things I want to say. Number one, this shiur is going to be dedicated Lilu Nishmat Pinchas ben Eser Zichron Levracha. The words of Torah be Lilu Nishmatot Tinashot Torah B'Torah Hayim. And as well, thanks to our dear friends Ellen and Zev, who have brought this really, really incredible spread of Moroccan pastries. We also want to have their two sons in mind, dear friends of mine as well, students. Shalom Daniel Ben Zev Be'eser, who is currently stationed on the Lebanese border, and of course Eliyav Yishai Tzion Ben Zev Be'eser, Commander Tank Unit in Gaza, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu should protect them and all of Chayalei Tzva Hagana Israel. Amen. Okay, just a quick little introduction on Parashat Toledot. Parashat Toledot begins with Yitzchak and Rivka praying, each on their own, really, for a child. It's been 20 years since they've been married, and they haven't had a child yet. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu listens to the prayer of Yitzchak, and Rivka is feeling some pain, as we know, and not sure what's going on inside her. She goes to see a malach, and she has twins. The first one that comes out is Esav. The second one that comes out is Yaakov. Esav is a man of fields, a man of the field, hunter. Yaakov is a man, Yoshev Oalim, who dwells in the tents, learns Torah. The bulk of the parasha speaks about the blessing of Yitzchak, wanting to give it to Esav. But of course, we know that the trickery, and I put that in quotations, the trickery of Yaakov to take those berachot from Esav, knowing how important they are, and therefore we know that bracha specifically was going to transcend many generations, and until today acts as a protection for all of Klal Yisrael. So again, that takes up most of the parasha. After Esav is deceived by his brother, Yaakov is forced by his parents to flee for his life, and he's instructed to go to the city of Haran, which is where Rivka's brother is stationed, Lavan. That's where he's going to eventually find a wife. That's going to take place in next week's parasha Vayetze. And the Torah, the parasha ends with this very much relevant in today, this marriage between Esav and the daughter of Ishmael, Mahalat. This becomes Esav's wife. Mekubalim say that this is the prelude to what's going to happen in the generation before Mashiach, where you have a combination of Esav and Ishmael together, which is exactly what we see right now. You have this marriage, this union between the two anti-Jew, anti-Israel, anti-Yaakov facets. Esav is just Stam, the anti-Semite. Esav sonet Yaakov, and Ishmael is the people from Ishmael, from Islam, I guess, that lay hate and wish to wipe out and annihilate Am Yisrael. This is it. This is where we're going to right now, and that is the prelude to Bnei Yisrael that is going to be born next week in Vayetze, as the culmination of all of Yaakov's children being all of them kulam tehorim, all of them holy, all of them pure. But we have to get through this, B'ezrat Hashem, as we always do, and hopefully we will see Mashiach soon. I want to speak today about a topic that is not often talked about. The words I'm going to say today are from R Avigdor Miller, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. When Rivka approached the prophet of Hashem because she was feeling something inside of her that wasn't normal, and she was given the news that she was carrying twins. And among the things that she was told were 3 words that would turn out to be or determine the course of history. The words are Verav Ya'avod Tza'ir. You should know, the Prophet said, that the older one, Verav, will serve the younger one. And that was the prophecy that Rivka gained even before she gave birth to Esav and Yaakov. Now, some people interpret this to mean that Esav was going to be a wicked individual, and therefore his descendants, the nation of Edom, would be forced to be subservient to Am Yisrael. To say such a thing is partially true. That Esav's descendants were going to serve Yaakov certainly was included in Verav Ya'avod Tza'ir. It happened that way in a couple of times in our history. In the days of David HaMelech, we are taught in the Navi that David HaMelech went out to conquer Edom. Many years after that, the nation of Edom really became a state with very little power. It was a vassal state. They were forced to be slaves to Am Yisrael. So we see that in the time of David, that's exactly who Edom was. They were like nobody. Later on, in the time of the second Bet HaMikdash, the prophecy was fulfilled once again. We are in the month of Kislev, of course, which we celebrate the holiday of Hanukkah. In the days of Yochanan Hurkanus, who was one of the kings of the Hasmonaim, they conquered Edom, and they were forced them to convert to Judaism. They were forced to circumcise the Edomites, and they became servant slaves to the Jewish people. So there's no question that there were times where this Nabi, you can come over here if you want. There's no, can we get some chairs? You don't have to sit behind. I feel bad. There's no question that the words of the Nabi that were said to Rivka were meant well. Esav would have to be Ya'avod Tza'ir. He would have to enter a period of servitude to control of his younger brother. But there's a problem with this. And the problem is that Esav, at this moment in time, when the angel is telling Rivka, this is what's going to happen, Esav didn't do anything wrong yet. He didn't do anything wrong. He hasn't even been born yet. A man who hasn't even exercised any free will, why should he be sentenced to servitude? Because of sins that he didn't do. It can't be. Now, we have ideas in our head that we were taught when we were children, says R Avigdor Miller. Especially when we learn about the Agata, Rashi says that Rivka would walk by the houses of worship, the Bet Avodah Zarah, and she would feel kicking. Everyone remembers this Rashi. Rashi says very clear. She would feel kicking. And then she would walk by the Bet Knesset or the Bet Midrash, and she would feel kicking as well. And that was Yaakov trying to get out. So everybody says, Esav, he's an Oved Avodah Zarah. Clearly, when she walked by a church and she felt the kicking, it must be someone who worshipped idols. You open picture books or parashat books of children, and Esav is portrayed as this extremely wicked fellow with weapons of war. Someone as if he was born already with a sword in his hand. And you have to understand that this is not so. And the reason why it's not so is because saying so would be contrary to the fundamental principles of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no such thing. Wicked from birth has no place in our belief. And every person, when they are born, has a new chance. Or if they are coming back to this world as a Gilgul, that's exactly the purpose of a Gilgul as a reincarnation, is to come and fix from afresh of what your previous life was. And a person who's born, whether he or she does not have any sin on their head, and they begin a life with a clean slate, and they have the full opportunity of free will, the opportunity to become a tzaddik or become, God forbid, a rasha, according to their own choice. And to say that Esav was born a rasha is wrong. And it's a contradiction to the emunah and the fundamental belief that we have to have. And I'll go on to say that Esav was actually much better than we probably think. And in his words, Rav Avigdor Miller's words, that if Esav was to walk into the room right now, we would all have to stand up. Everybody here would have to stand up. we're not going to be melamed zechut on Esav, but let's not forget that Esav grew up in the lap of Rivka and Yitzchak. Let's not forget that he Abraham Avinu is the house of Abraham Avinu. Esav was not a nobody. He's far from it. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, one of the great Tanaim of the Mishnah, would say that he also had a great father. He goes, but I was never able to attain the greatness of honoring my father like Esav honored his father. When Esav wanted to honor his father and perform the mitzvah kibud av va'em, he would put on his bigdei chamudot, his Yom Tov clothing. Imagine you wanted to go to ask your father for some money or your mother for some money. And, before I'm going to go and ask them for something, I'm going to go up to my room and I'm going to put on my suit, I'm going to put on my tie, and I'm going to come down, in respect, and as you try to butter her up or butter him up to get the money that you want for whatever, to go out to a restaurant, to go buy a slushie, or to go get a chocolate bar. Now, when Rabban Gamliel, Shimon ben Gamliel did this, he had to serve his father, maybe he did so. Okay, I'm not going to judge the Tana, but he couldn't do it like Esav. Esav, at all opportunities, at all times of the day, he would stop what he's doing whenever he heard that his father or his mother needed something, and he would go and put on his Shabbat clothing to go and serve his parents. He never walked in his father's presence without changing into better clothing. And if his father needed something during the day, he felt, I had to do it because I don't know if there's going to be another time where I can serve my father as such. So he changed his clothing every single time. And it's just one example of Esav. Esav was a very good person. He was a person with tremendous potential for greatness. So we have to rethink, what exactly did the Malach tell Rivka that day when she was pregnant with twins? V'rav ya'avod sa'ir. We cannot interpret v'rav ya'avod sa'ir as a sentence, as a punishment, and say because he was born wicked, that's why he would have to serve his younger brother Yaakov, because that's not true. Esav could have been very great, and as much success as Yaakov achieved, Esav could have achieved along with him. In fact, according to the Mekubalim, that Esav, the power of Esav, the neshama of Esav, had greater potential than Yaakov. So what does it mean that the older one would have to serve the younger one? What kind of serving of Yaakov does it mean if Esav had the bechira, had the free choice to be a tzaddik kamur, a full-fledged tzaddik, a completely righteous man? What does that mean? So the answer is that this nevuah that was foretold to Rivka about Esav's role is how Esav could gain fulfillment in his life. Esav's purpose, his perfection in life, was that he was to be a helper. He was to be an assistant to Yaakov in accomplishing great things in this world. And when the Navi said to Rivka, V'rav ya'avod sa'ir, that the role of Esav, the success of Esav, is to help Yaakov, his younger brother, fulfill his mission in the world. And that's how the younger one will also serve the elder one. That was a guidance, it was a heavenly guidance from Shamayim for Esav to understand that his tafkid, his purpose in this world, was to do that. And if had he done that, history would have played out totally different than what we are seeing right now. And how sad is it that there's a person with such potential, such character, talent, should go lost because he didn't want to accept that. If Esav would have executed his role properly, he wouldn't have been any less successful than Yaakov Avinu. He would have taken those talents, those amazing talents of the field, in his gevurah, in his readiness to help Yaakov to become great in his own right. He would be in Olam Haba right now, sitting next to his younger brother Yaakov Avinu, next to Yitzchak, his father, next to Abraham, his grandfather. The problem was that Esav wasn't ready to accept that role. He wanted to be the leader. I'm on top. I'm the one that was born first. And therefore, I'm leaving. If I'm not going to get this blessing, then I had to go. And that's why when he saw the brachot that was given to Yaakov, his younger brother, and he saw V'rav ya'avod sa'ir, the older one shall now serve the younger one, he couldn't take it. Because I'm going to be subservient to Yaakov. I'm going to be less than my younger brother. I don't want to hear stories about being a helper. I want to be the leader. I don't want to hear stories about being second place or second in command. So what did he do? The Torah tells us, "Vayelech el eretz mipnei Yaakov achiv." He went away to another land. He left. He ran away because of his brother. He couldn't remain in the same country as his brother, who was now going to be the leader, because he couldn't tolerate being second in command. And he ran away from his role, and that was the makebe patish. That was the final blow that ruined Esav and his family forever. And again, like I said, it's a real tragedy. It's a tragedy of tragedies, because Esav could have remained. He wasn't sent away like Ishmael was in the previous parashiyot. No one told him to leave. You had a job here. And imagine had he accepted that role, how our lives would have been different, how different the world's history would have been. He would have been a frequent visitor by us. He would have been our brother, mamash, like our brother. He would have been living in our neighborhoods, friendly, understanding what his purpose is, working together in the service of Hashem. But now he's cut off entirely. And he chose to let go of the great privilege of being a member, a family, a brother of this noble family, the holiest people in the world. You know, sometimes you have people in a community, in a kehila, or organizations that, you know, they have opportunities to be presidents, or they have opportunities to be CEOs, or whatever it is in the position of leadership, and they don't get it. They don't get it for whatever reason. So they become vice president, or they become manager. And they just not the top. And they can't take it. They say, you know what, I don't want to be here. They can't accept that their role is not at the top. And they become discouraged. So they pick up and they walk away and go, this is not something that I really want in my life. You can't be the best, so be the second best. Be the third best. There's also great success to be found being second in command. So much good can be accomplished in the kehillah, or in I'm not just speaking for our kehillah, in any kehillah or any organization, if you remain in the role that maybe was meant for you. And we'll talk about this more later. Helping from behind, working in the background. Esav could have come along with us. And there were people in history that actually, you know, took that backseat and accomplished great things. Yitro, for example, was Kohen Midian. Yitro was the priest of all the Midianites. He was the leader. He was the president of that cult, of that group, that nation. And yet he joined Moshe Rabbeinu, and it was something that was prophesied and praised by Bilam in his famous bunch of soliloquies and speeches in Parashat Balak, where Bilam says, "Vayaret HaKeni." Bilam saw the Keni, that's the descendants of Yitro, and he said, "Etan Moshavecha." The place where you are seated is a strong place. Vesim basela kinecha. You put your nest out on the rock. Meaning you chose to attach yourself to Bnei Israel as second. You were first. You were the leader. But now when you join Bnei Israel, Moshe Rabbeinu was the leader. In fact, he's your son-in-law. Imagine a father-in-law reporting to your son-in-law. But that's what it is. And what was the reward for that? That the children of Yitro sat in the Lishkat HaGazit, in the Sanhedrin, future many generations later, as brought down in Gemara Masechet Sotah. They didn't make the mistake that Esav made. Now, the truth is, Esav's family never admitted to the error. And they always held on to that belief, that thesis, that they were the ones that were deserving of it. And they were the ones who were chosen to lead, and they were cheated by Yaakov Avinu. He not only took my firstborn, but he also took my blessings. This trickster of a brother of Yaakov. You can see from the name. The name is called Edom, the red ones. So now why did the children of Esav call themselves Edom? So again, now we're going to go back to our grade 1 class, and we're going to say, oh, you know why? Because when he came back from the field, Yaakov was making a stew of red lentils, and red is Edom, and he gave him the bowl of red lentil soup, and he sold his birthright, and that's why Haken kara shemo Edom. Haliteni na min ha'adom hazeh, as the pasuk says. Give me some of that red soup. Haken kara shemo Edom. But does that make sense? Does that make sense that the progeny, the children of Esav, would forever call themselves such an uncomplimentary name? Because a reminder that their ancestor was so careless that he sold his birthright for red lentil soup? What a bizayon. Is there any bigger bizayon than that? Imagine that you were called because of a red lentil soup. No, that's not the reason. The answer is they didn't call themselves Edom because of the red soup. That's the Torah's reason for their name. It's a monument to the person who was willing to give up their future for a red bowl of lentils. But the nation of Edom had other ideas. They called themselves Edom because Vayetze Harishon Admoni. Esav came out first and he was ruddy. He was first and he was powerful. And that was a sign that he was boss. He was red. And red is a sign of strength. It's a sign of vigor. Because he felt that he was the one chosen by Hashem to be the leader. And the Edomites, the Edomim, they didn't believe in anything else. The story of the red soup was not even known to Esav's, grandchildren. They didn't even know that story about the red soup. To them, it was because we were Edomim because, look, my grandfather was a red man that was ready to go fight. He was ready to lead. And they couldn't accept that role. And because of that, they were cut off entirely. He was lost among the Goyim. Once upon a time, not long ago, in the last century or so, maybe the last couple of centuries, there was a great tzaddik named Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, Rabbi Yisrael from the city of Salant. He was a massive Talmid Chacham. He was the founder of the Musar movement in Europe. And he had great plans to further expand the learning in the world in Europe. And he was filled with good ideas. Not far from him was another man with a lot of influence. His name was Sir Moshe Montefiore. Some of you might have heard that name. And he was the Lord Mayor of England. And he was coming to visit Russia, where Rabbi Yisrael was. And Rabbi Yisrael felt this was an amazing opportunity for he and I to meet up. He had the money, he had the prestige, he had the connections, everything that would be required for me, Rabbi Yisrael, to go and bring Am Yisrael back to Hashem in a Russia that was suffering for many reasons historically, which we won't get into now, but many know what the history of Russia was all about. And Rabbi Yisrael was trying to get whatever Rav Moshe had, to use to his advantage. And what Rav Moshe lacked, Rabbi Yisrael had, because Rabbi Yisrael Salanter was a Gadol Batorah. He was a brilliant man. He had a clear vision for everything Torah connected to Torah. And really, if they had met and they would have just sat down and put their brains together, the world of Jews, the Jewry in Russia or in Eastern Europe would have been profoundly different. And so Rabbi Yisrael tried to meet Rav Moshe, but it didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen was because Rav Moshe had a secretary who was a German Jew named Dr. Levy. And he had his own idea about Russian Jewish rabbis, which he wasn't too fond of. And he didn't believe that they were the real Jewish leaders. The real Jewish leaders were the ones with the money, the ones with the influence. And Rabbi Yisrael can stay in his yeshiva, and he didn't really pull the strings to get them to meet. And that could have been one of the greatest tragedies in the 1800s. The tragedy of ignoring Verav Ya'avot Sa'id, to knowing what your role is and what you can contribute, whether or not you are at the top or whether or not you are second in command. And maybe had Rav Moshe Montefiore recognized what the true role was expected to be, maybe he would have come running. He should have come running to Rabbi Yisrael Salanter and probably would have saved the spiritual lives of thousands, if not tens of thousands of Jews in Russia. The role of being a helper, the role of being an assistant to the ones who are greater than him. So I come back to Esav. And again, that tragic refusal to accept his role. Now, the truth is, there were times in history when Esav's children and descendants did accept the role of Verav Ya'avot Sa'id. And they succeeded because of that. And there was one particular case which I want to bring up. It's a case that some of you probably heard of, but it's really an incredible story when you think about it. The noble story of the Roman Emperor Antoninus. He wrote a book. You can actually Google it. You can probably find copies of it on Amazon and definitely in your local library. It's called The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. That was his Roman name, Marcus Aurelius. It's a Musar book. It's an incredible book. And when it comes to Antoninus, we actually have an instance here where Esav fulfilled his role, where a Roman emperor was humbled before the Torah leader. And although the masses of the Roman population were not necessarily of Edom, but according to a lot of history books, he was in charge, and we have to call these people Edom. You got to hear the story of what happened shortly after the war of Beitar, which was a brutal war for Am Israel. The Romans were extremely angry at the Jewish people and were making gezerot, decrees after decrees, against the Jews who were left in Israel. You might remember that for 7 years after the fall of Beitar, Jewish corpses were left on the ground, unburied. And one of the reasons why we have the fourth beracha, the reason why we have the fourth blessing in Birkat HaMazon, Hatov ve'Ametiv, is because they were allowed to bury the corpses. After 7 years, miraculously, none of the corpses, decomposed. Thank you, and they stayed. It was an amazing miracle. So thousands of Jews were killed near Beitar, and they were laying around. And the leader of the Jews at the time, the Nasi, was Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. And he was appointed to travel to Rome in order to make a personal appeal to the Roman government and the emperor that they should rescind these gezerot. And while he was there in Rome, he came in contact with a young Roman named Marcus Aurelius. Now, the story really goes back from the time they were born. I'm not going to get into that. Otherwise we might stay here too long. But he met this man that he already had a previous connection, and they really built a huge friendship. They shared similar characters. They had a greatness in mind, and Marcus Aurelius admired Rabbi Yehuda Nasi to no end. Many years later, this Marcus Aurelius became Roman emperor and was called Antoninus, and he became a talmid, a student of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, a student of this rabbi. How did it happen? Because the emperors had a vacation spot in Israel, in the city of Caesarea. Caesarea, Caesar, that's why it was called Caesarea. This was their vacation Caribbean equivalent. It was a Roman city. Jews lived there also, but it was a Gentile city. And Antoninus would spend his vacations over there, and he had reason for that. Why? Because that was his secret way to spend time with Rabbi Yehuda Nasi so that he could learn. Now, during the war of Beitar, the Jews had made tunnels underground everywhere. We are very familiar with this right now, what's going on in the world. But they used it for war as well. Guerrilla tactics in their attempt to fight off the Romans, secret ways where they crisscrossed the country and they would appear and suddenly attack the Romans. The war with the Romans was going on for many times. At this point, the Beit HaMikdash was already destroyed, by the way, but there were still Jews living there. Now, Antoninus had a tunnel right near his palace in Caesarea, and through that tunnel he would go and he would visit Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Every night he would come to visit him, and they would learn. Nobody was allowed to know of this relationship. No one of the Romans, for sure, because had his counterparts or any of the other generals or leaders knew that the emperor was going to study Torah with a rabbi, he would have been assassinated. So that was the policy. So it was done in the utmost secrecy, this Torah study, chavruta, between Antoninus and Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. I want to read you an excerpt from the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah. I'm just going to read to you in English. Every day, Antoninus traveled through this tunnel to come visit Rabbi, and he would serve him with food and wine at the table like a butler. And when Rabbi wanted to climb onto his bed, Antoninus would bend down in front of the bed like a footstool. And he said, Rabbi, please step on me in order to climb onto the bed. This is the Roman emperor. But Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, but it's not derech eretz. It's improper to treat a king like that. Even if we have to respect the emperor. Antoninus says, if I only could be your mattress in the next world, I just want to be underneath you to serve you. I understand my role in my life. This is the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah. So then Antoninus looked at Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and he says, am I going to go to Olam Haba? Am I going to make it to Olam Haba? And Rabbi said, yes, you're going to go to Olam Haba. Antoninus didn't believe what he said. He said, but the pasuk says, "Velo yiyeh sarid lebet Esav." Nothing will remain from the house of Esav, which means that the whole nation of Edom is going to be lost. It's going to go up in smoke. No remnants I'm done. I'm finished. Not only in this world, but that means even in the next world. And I'm a descendant of Esav. So how are you so sure that I'm going to go to Olam Haba? And Rabbi told him, that's only be'oseh ma'aseh Esav. If you behave like Esav did. It means if you abdicate your role in helping Yaakov, if you walk in your footsteps of your grandfather Esav, then that's what's going to happen. But if you fulfill your role, then not only will you get your Olam Hazeh, you're also going to get your Olam Haba. Incredible Gemara, but the story doesn't end. What was the result of Antoninus fulfilling his role in this world? Am Yisrael was facing great danger in those days. As you know, they weren't going to be much longer in Israel. The Romans were taking over. The Bet HaMikdash was already destroyed. They were being sent into exile. It was a very, very dangerous time. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, at this moment, decided, this is the time that I have to confirm, that I have to complete the Mishnayot, Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. I have to set in stone the foundation of Torah Shebe'al Peh. Now, nowadays, you look at the library, we have a whole set of Mishnah over there. We have Mishnayot upstairs, Mishnayot here. Mishnayot you can buy anywhere. And it seems to us like a very simple manner. Okay, let's just grab all the rabbis, let's just write down the notes, the laws, send it to Amazon self-publish, and that's it. I'm going to have my set of Mishnah, 6 volumes, and everybody's happy. You know, little edits, and we're good. Send in the PDF. But it wasn't that simple. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi couldn't do it. He couldn't do it because even though he was a Nasi, he would have to call together all the Chachamim in order to approve the Mishnah. Yes, there was one who compiled it, but without the rabbis, without the Sanhedrin, then I can't do it. And the Romans wouldn't allow it because to gather all the rabbis to make a Sanhedrin again would be considered rebellion. And without a Nasi, without a Sanhedrin, you don't have the authority to make the Mishnayot. Why would the Jewish people even obey what Rabbi Yehuda Nasi wants to do at that time that he wanted to make a Mishnah? Don't forget that there was already a Jewish community in Babylonia, in Babel, that have already left for the exile, and where eventually the Gemara came about. So they would be saying, why are we gonna listen to the rabbi in Israel over there? We got our own rabbis over here. So just as the Mishnah continued for centuries and centuries, they would say, okay, we learned it by heart. Why do we need to write it down? Why do you care so much? And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was stuck, but he knew he had to do it. How was he able to do it? The answer is it was because of Esav. It was because of Antoninus. Where did Rabbi Yehuda Nasi get his power? Where did he get his great wealth from? It was from his student, his disciple, Antoninus, the Roman emperor. It was the backing of Antoninus that gave him the confidence to complete this project. He became tremendously wealthy and a great chacham, and there was nobody in all of Am Yisrael that was his equal to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and that confidence allowed him to go forward and push ahead. And he didn't have to worry about, what about the Romans are going to have a problem? I have the emperor on my side, and he's backing me. And so he did. He gathered all the Chachmei Yisrael, and the Romans didn't do a thing. They couldn't, because the emperor told them, don't bother them. Leave him do what he has to do. And all the Torah leaders came from Babel, and they came from Madai, everywhere in the world, and they sat there and they weighed down every single law and every single word, and they wrote down every single machloket that needed to be written down, and they combed through it with a fine comb, and they established the final language of the Mishnah, and they put their stamp on the Mishnayot together. And that saved us. That saved us. Antoninus, the one who was responsible for that Mishnayot, those Mishnayot, was Antoninus. Esav served Yaakov. Berab Ya'avod Sa'ir. Because of the humility of this man, a tremendous achievement resulted. We have Mishnayot, we have Gemara, we have Shiurim. Can you imagine the world without a Mishnah and Gemara? Like, mind-boggling. All because of this man. And that's what could have happened through history had Esav and his descendants. Who knows how many big achievements could have been performed if those who fulfill Hashem's role as helpers would have been willing to be subservient. So what does that mean for us? We have to make a little bit of effort. We have to know that the Torah wrote the story of Esav, not for the purpose of just reading it year after year, but teaching us lessons that apply in our own lives. And we'll talk about a few areas in life that, again, among many, that bring up this idea and this topic. There are many parallels of this episode that Esav shrugging off his role that we can learn from. For many people, their greatness lies not in being a leader, but in helping the leader. Many good people should be achieving greatness, assisting others, but they don't want that. They strive and they go for the title because they want the title, and they want to be considered the greatest or the number one or the president or the big rabbi or whatever it is. I hope I don't insult anybody listening. We have bli ayin hara, tens of thousands of Jews that are sitting and studying Torah on a daily basis. It really is a wonderful thing. And I wish I could say that all of these rabbis or all of these people studying, are going to be, great leaders in the Torah world and running schools and running yeshivas or running synagogues and communities. But that's not the reality of it. That's not the reality. There are many hundreds, if not thousands of people that are just there and they're not doing what they're supposed to do. And they could be better utilized in other places. They're now in their mid-20s or late 20s or early 30s, and they're just there. And they say that they're studying because they want a title, they want to get a job somewhere, and it's a chaval, because a lot of them have brains, and a lot of them are able to contribute in different places, but they're not. These are men with capabilities. These are men with talents, and they're squandering it because they want a title. They're squandering because they want a position of leadership. And how good would the world be if these people just step back and say, I understand that there are people that are really meant to Jewish leaders that are really meant to run the community at large, but I want to be here to help you. But instead, they butt heads because they want their own position, they want their own title. And there are many people like that, fresh minds that will totally disregard all the words of the previous chachamim or rabbis because they want to make a name for themselves. Because I want to be my own person. I want to show the world that I can also say things and again be a president or be a rosh yeshiva or be a big rabbi. People think I was brought up not to obey. I want to write my own book on life. I want to write my own book of Jewish law because I think differently. And they totally forget, that there were huge, massive chachamim that came before them that accomplished so much, but they're too arrogant to serve them. They're too arrogant to realize that maybe I can do better by taking a step back. And the truth is, we shouldn't be pointing fingers at others, but mainly we have to look inside ourselves. We have to realize that not everybody's a gadol. Most people are not leaders. Most people are followers, but just because you are a follower, that does not mean that you are second class. It doesn't mean that you can't contribute. Many people are not born to be leaders, and there's nothing wrong with that because not everyone is gifted with that. There are so many people that use their talents to serve Chachmei Torah. Look at Yoshua. Yoshua became Yoshua because he served Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what it was. That's how he became who he was. When Moshe Rabbeinu didn't have children, he had extremely smart children. He had nephews that were geniuses. Yoshua, the Hakadosh Baruch Hu recognized you're Meshamesh the Torah. You're coming to serve. He understood his role at the time. In today's generation, if Yoshua was alive, I'm starting my own shul. That's what Yoshua would have said. Sorry, Moshe, I'm going down the block in the desert. I'm gonna build my own Beit Knesset. I'm gonna build my own kollel. I'm gonna read my own classes. You, Moshe, you're old-fashioned. This is what would have happened today. People probably thinking, maybe this rabbi is going crazy. I don't know what he's talking about. But this is true. I don't know how I can tell you. Today, no one would talk chas v'shalom ill of Rav Ovadia Yosef Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Livracha. No one in the world would say Rav Ovadia was a gaon. When he was alive, oy vavoy. Oy vavoy what people would say about Rav Ovadia Yosef. You follow Rav Ovadia? Are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? He's too lenient. He has no halacha. This is what they were saying. This was saying Rav Ovadia Yosef. Because all of us, here's a man with photographic memory who wrote I don't know how many hundreds of books, who can tell you to the exact centimeter what any word in any of these books that he read, and you're coming here to doubt his halachic ability? Why? Because you want to make a name for yourself? Because you refuse to understand your role? Because you want to have your own yeshiva or your own Torah institution? That's the reason you're going to put down other people. We are ktanim compared to these greats. There's nothing wrong if you want to establish your own yeshiva and there's or little organization or movement. There's needs for that. I'm not saying there's not. And we see there's use for everything. We live in a day and age where there's so much chesed and there's so much good going around. And yes, you need leaders and you need CEOs and you need presidents, so on and so forth. There's nothing wrong with that just because you have an idea and you have talent and other people don't. So use that. But we have to understand what our role is. And the sooner that we believe that and recognize that, then things run a lot more smoothly. And then we live a more peaceful life with the people around us. Not only just for the chachamim and the rabbis, we have to do whatever we can to let our Jewish rabbis succeed. It's very difficult to succeed now. Take it from me. It's not easy. You have to face so many problems. Someone becomes a rabbi in a congregation of 100 members. It's not 100 members. It's 100 rabbis and one member. Everybody's a rabbi. Everybody's a rabbi. Everybody knows, and everybody rabbi, you got it wrong. No, I'm telling you got it wrong. That's not how we do it. So we're just going to throw out the 20 years or the 30 years that this man spent studying, okay? Because some guy opened up one book and said, yeah, you see, Rabbi, that's not right. So what's going on? Because you have 100 people teaching the rabbi what's right and what's wrong because nobody understands the role. No one wants to be a helper. But we have helpers in this room. If I just said I want to give a shiur, or I might be here by myself talking to a wall. But we have people say, you know what? I want to promote the rabbi's class. I want to market the rabbi's class. I'm going to put it on this WhatsApp chat. I'm going to put it on Facebook, and I'm going to put it on social media. I want people to know. I'm going to bring delicious Moroccan treats, and I'm going to make everybody feel at home. That's unbelievable. That's making not only my life easier, but you're as equal to me. Because without you, again, I'm talking to walls. But you're not going to come sit here and give the class. Now, by all means, if you want to come and give a class, let's talk about it. But you got to know your roles. So you got that. And then you have our home, you have our marriage, you have the life with one spouse. Understanding your role in your marriage, no different. How many marriages fail? Because, again, husband doesn't understand his role and the wife doesn't understand her role. The moment the wife starts thinking that she needs to do the job of a husband and the husband starts thinking that he needs to do the job of a wife, it's going to fall. It's going to fail. I'm not saying there's no exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule. But the fact remains, the wife is who keeps the stability in the home and the peace in the home. The husband, for the most part, is the breadwinner and having to go out and work and lay down the laws. And that's how it's always worked. That's how it's always been for 5,000 plus years. So why is it that this last generation thinks, we're going to change the rules? We're gonna change roles. Because it has to. Equal. So you get the husband to start making the food and washing the dishes, and she's going to start, painting the house and doing construction. And what do you end up? Everything falling apart. The food tastes bad, and the house falls apart, right? So what are we doing to ourselves? What are we trying to convince here? And that's why the divorce rate in today's generation has never been higher. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. So this is what it is. This is part of our life of V'Rab Ya'avod Tza'ir. I'm not going to say who's the Rab and who's the Tza'ir in the husband-wife union. I'll let each spouse decide what that is. But I believe they're both equally as important in their own ways. But it's not only in marriage. It's not only in their home. All of our lives are expected to learn from that mistake that Esav did and fulfill our roles as helpers and fulfill our roles as assistants to all good things. In one place you might be expected to lead because you have a talent, you have an ability to to run course and take control and take the reins and say, yes, I'm going to do it. And another place, you have to find the wherewithal to believe and understand that I'm going to take a back seat. And I'm going to stay in the background, and I'm going to help. I'm not just going to run away like Esav did. That was a mistake. I'm going to stay there. I'm going to help my brother. I'm going to be an assistant. Whether it's at home, in your marriage, and that's what it is. That's how we gain perfection in life, is attaching ourselves to people greater than us when we realize that there are people greater than us, and as well when there are no people greater than us in a certain situation, then we become that person. That's how we strive to make something of ourselves, and that's how we strive not to remain nobody. Success doesn't mean that you have to become famous. That's not important. It's not important. Greatness in this world doesn't mean that if you don't start this big movement and this new fad or this new company, then you are not great. You can do tremendous things even without being a leader, as long as you utilize the opportunities to help, to assist as much as possible. As long as we learn the lesson that Esav never did, that being a helper can be the best achievement in life. It means that we are finding favors in the eyes of Hashem, and that's how we live a life successfully. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a wonderful night.